Today I'm starting work on this very old antique bed for my friend Greg, who lives across the alley from me. And last year his wife Suzanne passed away from brain cancer. And that was a tough time for Greg and everyone else. But this bed has some significant importance to Greg and his family, as it was given to Suzanne by the family of a dear friend many years ago, as the lady who owned this antique bed was instrumental in helping Suzanne learn about Jesus Christ, and was instrumental in Suzanne becoming a Christian. It is this antique bed that leaves one more lasting memory for Greg and his family, since it came from the person who helped change Suzanne's life. The problem is, it is in very bad condition. The cracks are everywhere, a lot of bad repairs made through the years by other people. So based on that, our plan is to completely restore it for Greg and his family, and that way his granddaughter will be able to use it. Sadly, Suzanne passed away 3 months before her granddaughter was born. And now, as little Georgia grows up, her grandmother will no doubt look over her as she sleeps in this very special bed.
And that one's out.
All right, so this is the left leg, and the finish is so worn out, it came off with not a lot of effort. This is actually made from one piece of log. There is no laminated lines in here at all, which is probably pretty typical of the time, but not nowadays. Sounds cool it is made out of one piece of wood, but the difficulty is, as it gets older and older, you have an opportunity for splitting, and so that is what's been happening with this leg. There's a split here that is going to have to be stabilized, a split around this knot, and probably the worst of it is on the back. I think this split that runs pretty long was probably caused when they cut this out to install different hardware for the bed rails. And whoever did this did not help the situation, so this is going to require a little work to fix. Okay, so what we are looking at now is the right leg, and the right leg has similar significant problems as the left. We have an extensive crack right here that has gone through pretty deep, and where the head is attached to the leg with a dado, it has come completely apart. And the decorative piece is totally smashed. I have no idea how that happened. And as I mentioned earlier on the other leg, this is one full piece of wood. But someone has installed this hardware in place of the original hardware in what was the original slot. And right through here they have cut this out, but this is going to require significant work. It is probably going to be best to run the router through here, square this all up, and then insert a piece of hard maple, and then remount the hardware. Okay, so what we are looking at now is the center panel of the footboard. It connects to the top and bottom of the footboard and to the left and right legs. But what has happened here is through time, it has bowed considerably, and it has bowed to the point it has cracked right down the middle. So based on that, this panel is going to have to be replaced. So this is the head of the footboard I have been working on. I've got the back cleaned up, and for where we are at, I think we're okay there. But this is the front side, and I've stabilized all the cracks, and then I've had to revert back to my high school auto body woodshop days, and I've used wood Bondo to help fill in behind the cracks that I had glued up, and then level out some of the bad spots. I'll sand this off, and then we can move back to working on the legs.
I'm just squaring these corners up from when I routed these yesterday, so I'll be able to drop a piece of hard maple in here. But you know, when you work on an old piece of furniture like this, can you imagine the stories this bed could tell? know, this particular bed is, from an antiques perspective, is really not worth anything. Most people would just throw it in the garbage. But this piece of furniture is important to this family. And so Greg and his daughter, it's a piece of furniture that they want to have for the rest of their life. So, as many cracks and bruises that are in this piece of furniture, I'm just going to do my best to put it back together. It may not totally look like it was originally with the stain color and those kinds of things, but the bones of this bed will still be there. And when it's all done, I'm sure they're going to be pretty happy with it. Well, I've got our piece of maple cut, and it looks like it's going to work just fine, so we're going to test fit it. But I decided to take this little piece off that was just hanging here. It was just too thin, and it looked like it had a little crack on it, so I think it's going to be better. I went and chiseled it out, and then I can fill this in a little easier. So this is the piece that's going to fit here, so let's see how it goes. Look at that. That is perfect. Okay, before I glue this in, I countersunk a couple holes here just to help hold it in place while it's drying. So this piece of maple looks like it's going to be pretty good. Looks pretty tight grain wise. So here goes. And I was able to cut it at the correct angle so it comes up this curve of this leg. So when it fits in there, it looks just like that. You can't hardly even feel a seam at all. So this is the other leg that I've started work on, and I've already fixed where the bracket should go like we did on the first leg. But this is the leg that really had some serious problems to it. And one of them was that there was a crack from this point right here, and it ran all the way across where they had cut this piece out before and came all the way down to here. And this is a pretty significant crack here. And sometimes what I could do is simply put this on the table saw and cut this out and re-glue it. But in this case, because this leg sits on a big curve right here, I'm going to try something different and see how it goes. I really want to avoid cutting this on this curve right here. So the first thing I did was fill all around here with epoxy, all around the joint. And then I came back through this long crack right here and filled it full of baking soda. And then I used super glue to fill in behind that baking soda. And by doing so, it created an exothermic reaction, creating heat, and it set that super glue up really fast. But at the same time, that super glue was able to drain down into that crack. And over here on the end, you kind of see the same thing. This is where a crack was, and this is really hard now, and the super glue's on top of that, so I'll be able to sand this down. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a piece of fiberglass cloth across this crack, and then when I go to wood bondo it, this piece of fiberglass cloth will be bound underneath that wood bondo, and nobody will ever see it. So I'm hoping this is going to make the difference in holding this crack together. Well, our next step is to start gluing things back together, and everything's squared in place. And so first start is just to glue this joint together where this dowel is sticking out. I'm going to use that dowel to help keep me squared on when I go to put the holes in, and I can cut that off later. Everything else is level and ready to go. I'm just trimming in these seams with a little filler. I always like to make sure, even though this is really tight, that this is filled in. And I'll be able to sand this off very lightly since I've taken so much down. But, you know, I mentioned that the bones of this bed will always be here, even though I've had to use some additional pieces. I've been able to save the big curved log legs, and I've saved the headboard, and I've even saved this bottom board. All I've had to do is put this piece of birch on top of it, just helps make it look a little better and secure it in place. So all in all, I think it's going to look pretty good. You know, a couple minor changes, but I think once it's painted up, it's going to look really good. It's time to start working on the headboard.
and we faced a number of significant repair challenges. So it's always good to document and get some good video of what the project looks like as we get going. So I'm going to walk you through some of these major repairs that we have to make. First on the list is the amount of cracks we have to deal with, and some of the cracks on the headboard are really, really bad. In this case, on the top one right here, I can completely see daylight all the way through it. And as I move down, there's two major cracks in this top portion, and it has caused the entire top of this headboard just to completely flop around. This particular board has a gigantic bow in it. And so as I take this apart, I'm going to see if I can get this straightened back out again. But all of these boards are either cracked and they have all separated from each other. Like the footboard, the hardware section on the legs is just in deplorable condition. There's been many repairs made through the years, and it's just caused this entire leg to be completely blown out. And it's the same way on the other leg as well. Where the boards connect to the legs, all the glue has completely dried up. And so with a little hot water, I'm pretty sure these boards are going to separate from the leg with no problem. On the back, there's been a number of repairs made, and I really don't think that these two blocks are original. I think they were added at some point in time. This piece in the middle is definitely original. It has the same color stain on it, and it actually uses square cut nails to hold it in place. There's been other attempts at repairs, and these two brass screws are definitely not original that are right there. But the cracking comes completely through to the back, and it's pretty visible. And this particular board with a huge bow on it is really visible from the back. The legs are missing a number of these corner blocks, and so we'll have to replace those when we go to put everything back together. I'm going to start work on this right leg now, and this is where the hardware goes, but this is in really, really terrible condition. When they cut this out, they had actually stuck the broken piece down in there to help hold that piece of hardware up. It was really a bad deal. And then it's cracked so bad, it comes clear up here, splits, and of course this is missing. But if you come to the other side, this is completely cracked. It's completely coming off. So I think the best thing to do is going to be able to just completely cut this completely out, glue and screw in a whole brand new piece of wood, and then put the hardware in after that. Well, I've marked this piece that's going to have to come out, and you can see how much I'm going to have to take out. It's at least 1.5 inches, and then this whole length of this, so I can get around that full-size crack. So in the long run, this is going to be a better way to go.
So I've cut this crack out where this bracket has to be put in, and then I've made a new piece of hard maple, and it's going to fit just right down in there like that. And then we'll clean it up on the edges and screw it in and glue it. And our bracket will go right in here. So that's definitely going to improve things quite a bit. Got our glue in. Our glue looks pretty good. The fact that this piece is going to be repainted allows us to make this kind of repair like this. Frankly, as damaged as it was, there was probably going to be no way that we could have ever got a real decent coat of stain back on it. It just had too many cracks and too many pieces that would have had to been replaced to match. And to be honest with you, I think it's going to look a lot better painted than this old brown stain. What I try to do is only get these down so far with the drill, and then I come back in and hand check them so I don't break the wood, or maybe twist the screw to the point where it's not good to use anymore. But these Torx screws that I got for woodworking, they just don't break. They really work good. All right, that's it. Let it dry up and clean it up, and we'll route a new place for the bracket.
It's time to move on to the bed rails, and unfortunately at some point in time of the life in this old bed, somebody cut the rails right in half and tried to add an extension piece and tried to hold it together by using these finish nails. Well, that clearly never worked, so based on everything I am seeing, with that kind of damage done, I think from a safety standpoint it will be best to replicate new bed rails and not use any of these pieces that have been cut in half. The current old bed rails were made using a piece of 1-inch thick lumber. So in order to replicate that, I'm going to use a piece of 1-inch thick clear poplar. Poplar paints up real well, and from a strength standpoint, it will work well for this application. And then all I have to do is use the router to put the same detail on the top edge. So our first step is to remove all this old pine that they've attached to the bed rail so that we can use the bed rail as a template onto our new piece of poplar lumber. But take a look at this. This is how bad this hardware has been put on installed. And this is broke all out. I'm sure this was where the original hardware was at. And so we're going to take this off because we are going to be using this. But when we go to put this on the new piece of lumber, we'll make sure that it gets installed correctly. I've been doing a little research on this old bed, and based on the saw marks on the back of the headboard, combined with the square cut nails and the original horseshoe style hardware, which would have been on the bed rails, I'm pretty confident this bed was built sometime between 1880 and 1890. It's Sunday morning, and what a great day to have our bed finally standing up. Yesterday I finished replicating the bed rails, and now it is off to final finish. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's going to turn out. All of the repairs are made, but now it's time to start the finishing. For this project, I'm going to use a shellac-based primer. The shellac primer will definitely cover up all the knots so they won't bleed through, and it will cover the wood bondo. The first coat will go on real thin, which will help see if there are any other spots needing correction. And from there, multiple coats of primer sanded between each coat will provide a great surface for the paint. Well, our primer's all done, so it's ready to start our paint. And so we'll be doing the same thing. We have multiple coats of paint to put on. We'll hand sand them back, and then we'll put our tinted polyurethane on top of that. So here we go. With the final coats of clear coat applied, this old bed is ready for a new generation of Tiptons. But I must admit, when I first saw the condition this bed was in, I was not sure I could fully repair it. But sometimes the greatest challenges bring the best rewards, and what better reward can there be in helping a friend hold on to a memory of a loved one? There were certainly moments when I was confronted with a problem that left me pondering on how to proceed, but when that happened, I was sure Suzanne was looking over my shoulder, cheering me on not to give up. That is what Suzanne was to many people, a cheerleader, providing inspiration to each and every person she met. Suzanne Tipton was first a daughter, a wife, a mother, and a very proud grandmother. She was a neighbor and friend to many, but first and foremost, she was a follower of Jesus Christ. No doubt the world would be a better place in it with more Suzanne Tiptons in it. So this brings me to the end of the story of this old bed, but really, it is just the beginning.